What's going on? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and on the phone line, I have a very special guest, so why don't we have him introduce himself real quick?
Wait a minute. I have to introduce how special am I that I have to introduce myself? My goodness.
You're a legend, Paul.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is very popular Miami radio personality and aging teen idol, formerly of the 28-year Paul and Young Ron show, now going on his 38th year in radio. He's Miami's own Paul Castronovo, meaning nothing to anybody listening.
How crazy does it feel that it's been 38 years, Paul?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's how long it's been, but I don't have a calculator in front of me, but my first year on the air was 81. It's insane. You know, I was at Morning Show Boot Camp this year. I expected to see you there in Chicago, and standing up on the stage and doing my thing, I'm looking out. I'm the oldest, one of the oldest guys in the room. And I remember when I first started going to Morning Show Boot Camp in the first year I was there in Atlanta, I remember being a young guy in the crowd looking at the older guys going, those guys are legends. Well, a bunch of those guys are gone now. And I guess it's my turn for a while. And then in a few years, it'll be their turn. And the young guys like you will be coming along. So, how does it feel? I had no idea it would be a career.
How did you first get into radio?
In high school, I was class president for a few years and whatnot, and I did the morning announcements every single day throughout high school. And interestingly, I would listen to the morning DJs on WSHE radio in Miami, and I would imitate them when I did the morning announcements. So I would come on the radio and say, "Good morning, class," or whatever, and I would do it in that 1970s era, cool weed smoking sounding DJ voice and I would imitate. And I drove my friend Wendy, who did the announcements with me, nuts. And she's like, "What are you doing? What is that voice?" I'm like, "I'm imitating the DJs on the radio." And I never thought about it being a career, but when I got to college, they're all like, "You should be a lawyer. You can talk. You should be a lawyer." And the upstairs neighbor at my apartment complex in Gainesville at the University of Florida was a guy named Rich Fields. Rich went on to be the announcer on The Price is Right. "Come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right." And he said to me, "What do you want to do?" And I go, "Everybody wants me to be a lawyer, but I want to be on TV. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live." He's like, "Well, you need to come down to the journalism school and check out the broadcast facilities." So I went down and I went to the TV station. And they gave me a camera and a crew and said, "Well, go out and get some stories." And every story I did was the camera was facing me and I was doing yuckety, jokey stuff. And the news director says to me, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "This is news." I said, "But I'm a funny guy." And he goes, "Follow me." And grabbed me by the ear like an old teacher would. And he took me to the elevator and he walks me into the FM rock and roll station, Rock 104, and said, "I got one for you. Here's your next morning man." I couldn't, I honestly, God, you couldn't make it up, but that's really what happened. Had this guy though, had the foresight to see where my talents could have been, I was producing some stuff that could have been on the Daily Show. I was doing funny 2 to 3 minute segments, but he didn't know what to do with me and I didn't know where to go with it. So I ended up doing rock radio, which has been a wonderful career, mostly focusing on comedy.
I've noticed in radio, Paul, that there's times that things really should work out, but when there's like a PD or there's a head honcho that just doesn't get what you're trying to do, it's just not going to happen. And then you have to make it happen elsewhere.
Yeah, I've been lucky in my career that I haven't had to move. Early on, the first few years, I was bouncing around a little bit, but I always knew where I needed to be, and that was South Florida. When I got into the business, I thought, well, I should get to L.A. because I'm business. The problem I had was I came along a couple of years after Mark and Brian, and Mark and Brian already had a stronghold on Los Angeles, and I was smart enough to realize you don't go to LA and compete with Mark and Brian at their game, we had very similar shows, and you don't go to New York and compete with Howard Stern because that's where he was on. He wasn't syndicated back then, and so New York and LA were already taken, and I thought, well, I don't want to go to Pittsburgh, I don't want to go to Buffalo. I'm from South Florida, so why don't I become the man in Miami? And it's a crapshoot, but it worked.
What are some of the best parts about working there, and what are some parts that maybe you're not a big fan of when it comes to working in Miami?
Well, the most difficult part of working in Miami, first of all, the best part is being in Miami. I mean, I live about an hour north of Miami, but, it's a big stick and a big signal. So living in South Florida, there's nothing like it. I'm a fisherman, I'm a surfer, I'm a diver, I'm a boater. I like going I have my boat in the backyard. I go to the Bahamas by boat. I grew up a Miami Dolphin fan. I went to the University of Florida. So being in Florida and living in my home, my parents here, my sister, my best friends, all from high school. There's, in radio, if you can work in the town you grew up in, it's the best scenario because you know everything about that town. You know the history. And all these years, people have tried coming into town and competing with me, and they just haven't because they're from some other town. They don't know. And I'm one of them. So that's the good part. The crappy part is, and the most difficult part is, as watching the demographics over the years change, being in rock radio, you target a certain audience. Well, in Miami-Dade County, 70% are Hispanic, and it's hard to get. I got some dude who grew up listening to who loves Pitbull. Probably hard to get that guy to become a Zeppelin fan. So it's been hard. It's like a needle in a haystack, the way I describe it, to find an audience as the years have changed. But somehow we've done it.
One thing that I've noticed you do well, and actually now I work for iHeartMedia here in Tampa, so I've been getting to know all the names, and one of the names that I've been talking to a lot is Brian Donovan, and he was saying that you're one of the best in the company when it comes to like social media and the way you like innovate yourself. And I really think that's cool, Paul, because a lot of radio people seem like they don't want to do social media or they're too cool for it. But you got a better TikTok page than me. Your TikTok page is cool, dude.
Yeah.
You do a good job.
I'm 62 years old and I do TikTok videos, which is kind of funny. What my problem, and Brian's some good guidance, but I put stuff up that I think is I like. I never know what's going to get traction. I think that something's unbelievably funny and entertaining, and it's, short and sweet, but I'll only get a few eyes on it. Then I'll put something else up, and it'll get 30,000 views in 10 minutes. It's the weirdest thing. I'll put something up hilarious of my dog, and I'm just learning. Is it hashtags? Is it algorithms? When to post? I don't know. And Brian and I go back and forth. He's like, just keep throwing it up there. It'll, I had a couple that got over 1 million views. And one was backstage. Jason Bonham gave me a little video of him and Sammy Hagar warming up backstage. I go, you mind if I post that? He's like, no, go ahead. 1 million views. And then a friend of mine found a bottle floating out in the ocean. It had a message in it. I posted that, 1 million views. But the rest of them, I throw them up there. Funny stuff at restaurants, good me cooking stuff. And some will get 20 grand, some will get 500. I never know what's going to hit, but I'm not afraid of it. For a long time I was like, I'm a radio guy. Why do I have to do all this crap? I will be honest with you. There's too many of them, though. I mean, I can't spend all day. If I just spent all day doing Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and Clubhouse, and there's 3 or 4 other Twitch, Snapchat, I wouldn't be able to do my show. I put in 8 hours a day getting ready to do a 4-hour morning show. I don't know how I find time to do videos.
What I've noticed about TikTok, bro, is that if you try too hard to make a really good video, it's not going to take off unless you're like famous. But if you put up a random video, that's when it's going to take off. It's like there's some weird thing in the algorithm where they like can tell that you're trying hard and they just don't want to see it do well. Because one time I got 20,000 views for a video where I said to go to Winn-Dixie to get cheap drinks. And I was like, hey, you can get a Bang Energy for $1.50 or whatever. And I had this like, I was really hyper or whatever. And it got 15,000 views. And then I'll put up clips of when I worked at the Bone and it'll get 200 views. It's a very weird app. It's very weird, bro.
Very strange. Hey, you know what? I'm going to keep trying though. I tell you what, I got a friend of mine sending me some raw footage and I'm going to pop it up today of he was out fishing. And he caught a shark. And as he was reeling the shark in, a giant grouper came up and ate the shark. Now, something tells me that could get a billion views on TikTok, but you never know.
That could get that many, or it could just get 2 and never get shared. I honestly don't get it. Do you ever get nervous about them having your info? Is that a big thing in your world? My thing is I have nothing to hide, Paul, so I'm like, have at it. You can see that I go on Pornhub and I go on Facebook. I have nothing to hide. Do you ever get worried about them having your info? I personally don't care.
I think about it. My wife is way more worried about it than I am at this point. What do you want from me? Yeah. Hey, what are you going to do? You know, I guess I've been on the Pornhub as well, sir.
One thing I've noticed is that you've never really been a raunchy DJ that's like interviewed porn girls. You like, or maybe I missed out.
I never did that, but we did some edgy stuff back in the day. But listen, you have to understand, you know, in my years on 94.9 Zeta in Miami, which was 90s into the early 2000s, Howard Stern was our competition. So it didn't make programming sense for me to try to out-raunch Howard. And, you know, and then once the Janet Jackson Nipplegate thing happened, we really cleaned up our act because the company didn't want us to get sued and I didn't want to get fired. So I just tried to do, you know, up to the edge. But, you know, we used to do a bit called Love Connection Wednesday. And we had this is when I was single. We bring in these single women who were, you know, we'd ply them with alcohol and we'd get 3 guys to call in the show and we'd send them out on a date. But we got, you know, we would ask some nasty questions about vibrators and stuff like that. And yeah, I remember then I got engaged and my wife's like, yeah, you asking girls about sex, that shit's got to end. And, you know, she was right.
How did you meet your wife? I just saw it was your anniversary, by the way.
Yeah, 26 years. It's a great story. I met my wife because of broadcast. You know, I don't know how long you've been aware of my career, but I had a guy on my show named Omelet. And Omelet is still on the radio. He does mornings in northern Michigan. But he was on my show. He was an intern, and he was a student at the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, where my now wife was a teacher. And he was failing miserable. You know, he'd stay out late and party all night. And he'd come to the morning show at 6, and then he would fall asleep in her class, and he was just failing. And she said, you're going to fail this class, but I'll give you extra credit if you get those guys from the radio to come in and speak to the class. And he comes to me, he's like, hey man, I'm failing my class. Will you come into the school and speak? I'm like, no. Am I getting paid? No. And then he says to me, and this is the truth, he goes, dude, you got to meet my teacher. She's a hot Italian babe. And if you meet her, I guarantee you'll marry her. Now, I was in my early 30s and single. I'm like, hot Italian babe? You know, I'm Italian. What the hell? I got nothing to lose. So I talked my partner into joining me, and we went down and spoke at the school. What he neglected to tell me was that she was already married. So I started hitting on her immediately, of course. And she's like, yeah, I'm married. And then I ran into her like a year later. She was like, hey, I'm no longer married. And there it is.
That had to be weird that you're just up there talking to her and then she says she's married. I've never had that happen, but when I was on Tinder, there were girls when I was single that would be like, oh, I'm married. I'm like, well, why are you on this app? And they're like, oh, I'm just looking for friends. I'm like, shut up. You're just looking to cheat, but you're just not into me.
That's terrible. No, I didn't. Thank God I didn't have to deal with Tinder when I was coming along. But, you know, all my friends were getting married. I was 34. You know, I met her and got married at 36, had a kid at 40. You know, I think it was right for me. Good timing.
I think that might be what I do too. If I do have kids, is the thing I'm going to wait. Because, dude, I'm seeing so many people in my age group that are having kids and they are so unhappy. It is unbelievable. It's crazy.
It definitely is an adjustment to your lifestyle. I will tell you that. But I'll tell you, you know, also doing morning radio, you're home anyway. You're not. If you're running around at night and you're a morning radio guy in your 30s, then you don't have a show. There's no way.
That's very true. Because what time do you go to bed each night?
You know, about 10 o'clock, I'm done. You know, I'll tell you, I've been working from home now that the technology is good and through all the pandemic, working from home is freaking awesome. Not having to drive an hour every day. Believe me, I believe that rest and sleep are crucial to what we do.
Oh, dude, for sure. When I've worked morning radio, if the show begins at 6, I'll sleep until 4:50. So then that means I was going to bed. Latest was 9. Like even last year's Super Bowl, I was so tired the next morning, and I was applying for a morning job in Virginia, and I didn't get it. But I was like talking to them, and they were saying that they get up every day at 3:30, and I was like, I'm almost glad I didn't get it, because I'm like, I would never be able to watch the Super Bowl, never be able to watch any show, because then it'd be like you get 4 hours of sleep, and
hey, you know what?
It's crazy.
Super Bowl, I usually, like I was at a Super Bowl party this year. You just suck it up here and there, but there are certain things that you can't miss. I haven't missed many shows over the years. I remember I went to a Monday Night Football game. The Dolphins were playing at the Hard Rock Stadium. This is going back 27 years. I don't even know what the stadium was called back then. And I must have, either didn't set the alarm or whatever, got hammered. But I woke up. We were playing the Buffalo Bills. I woke up with my intern standing in my bedroom going, dude, we thought you were dead. And it was like 8:30. I looked at the clock, 8:30. I missed 2 hours of my show. But that was the last time I said, I'm never going to Monday Night Football again, because you just have to be able to say no. And during college, I did morning radio. And while all my buddies were out getting hammered, Mr. Castronovo was going to bed because I had to do it. I mean, it's just, but it paid off. I made a fortune. Call me crazy.
What are they doing now? All those friends when you were going to bed and now you're making a good living. What are they doing?
A lot of some of my guys are sales guys. Some of my guys own businesses. Some of my guys are lawyers. I dedicated my life to doing this crazy thing. It probably almost killed me because it's not a healthy lifestyle. But I got my weight under control. So I'm in the best shape I've been in 20 years. So that's good. But it's hard when sometimes you sleep those hours, you get up 4 o'clock in the morning, you haul ass, suck down a bunch of coffee, you eat a bunch of crappy donuts, you eat a sub after the show, and then you go to sleep for, and then before you know it, you gain 50 pounds. It's like, oh, crap. But yeah.
So a lot of times when I hear, not like personally, but you'll just hear through life that like overweight people say it's impossible to lose weight. And then you look at pictures of Paul and you look so good, dude. It's crazy how good you look for how long I've known you. How did you do it?
It is impossible to lose weight, but honest to God, if you stop eating, you'll lose weight. But I literally cut what I was eating in half, and at the same time, I added crazy cycling and weightlifting into my regimen. And the pandemic was a perfect time. I quit drinking for like a year. The pandemic was a perfect time to do it because I had all the free time in the world. I was working from home. I didn't have to travel and didn't have to work to go to the radio station. So I basically, I'd get off the air at 10 and no meetings, no anything. And I'd get on my bike. I'd go lift weights and saw a nutritionist. So I went from everything I was eating to eating like maybe even less than half of that. It was almost starvation in the beginning, but I did it and I sucked it up. The first 6 months were brutal, but I put it together and now I'm in crazy. It was fun going to morning show boot camp and seeing all my radio buddies. They're like, dude, look at you.
Yeah, it's crazy because I was like looking for pictures to share and I couldn't find the one that we took in 2014 or 13. And anyway, I would have looked really young. Glad. Yes, that's what I'm saying too, is I couldn't find it. And I'm like, maybe it's better I don't have it because it was so long ago and we just looked so different that I'm like, let me find a more recent picture of Paul to post.
Well, if you need a picture, let me know. I'll send you one.
Now, when you think about radio, and you think about what you've done, Paul, how do you want people to remember you? Because especially when you do rock radio, you're going to have haters and you're going to have people that love what you do. So how do you want people to remember you when you retire? You know what I mean?
Well, people ask me about retirement a lot. I'm just like, God, I have a fear of it. And it's not that I'm not going to have a salary. It's just that it really has become my identity. And I hope that, I mean, I'm just tied to the community, and I'm tied to the radio, and people, there are generations of people that have grown up listening to me. And I hope they don't think I was an asshole. I hope they think I was a good guy. And I hope I made a few people laugh. That means, I hope people speak of me like, oh, that dude was the bomb, whatever. I hope they speak nicely but then again, I know I go on social media. I saw someone post the other day, Paul Castronovo hasn't been irrelevant in 30 years. Like, okay, that's your opinion, but I'm still here.
Dude, I am convinced that some person made the internet to ruin the world, because I get a decent amount of hate online, and some of it doesn't even make any sense. They're just saying things to say things. Like, I truly feel bad for people. Like, you can like me or not, but I feel bad when people hate radio people that much. Like, we're just doing a job. Like, it's not that
right.
It's not that serious at all.
You don't have to listen. I'm here to kill 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
You can either use my show or find another one. If I say something you don't, it's like the same. Listen, these are the same people that go to a comedy club and get offended by something the comedian says.
Yeah.
And then they go online and trash the comedian and trash the club and complain and want everybody canceled. Come on, man. You don't like what I said on the radio? Okay, call in, argue with me, or go away.
Does it feel pretty cool to know that you're one of the go-to radio shows that comics mention when they go on other shows? So what I mean is, if I'll listen to a podcast with a comedian, or I'll listen to Calta and they talk about different radio shows, whenever it's a comedian, you're one of the first shows to be brought up, and they'll say Paul and Young Ron, but you're always, it's you or Opie and Anthony or Bennington. How does that feel to know that you've made a huge impact? Because from what I can guess is that you don't make it about you, Paul. It seems like you want to help out the comedians.
It was, it's a true gift being able to meet some of these guys. And yeah, that, some of my closest friends to this day are guys that, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, guys that came along on my show early on, and Dom Irera and some Billy Gardell, my God, and Bob Kelly. And yeah, a lot of those guys started, on the Paul and Young Ron show. It's funny. I didn't know how to deal with them in the beginning. And, it took me a long time to figure it out. I didn't know. And again, there's no school that teaches you how to interview a comedian. I used to think they had to come on and like on Bob and Tom, they would have them come do their act. I never wanted that. I wanted them to be a part of our show. And I think they don't want to do their act, by the way. They want to come on and just be, and some guys get it. They just kind of slide right in. I still do it all the time with guys, but it is an honor. It truly is. And when I hear a podcast and they mention us, I get goosebumps.
Yeah, it must be crazy, dude, because you just think about how long you've been in radio, and if you could have told that kid that was being kicked out of the news talk channel 40 years ago that would happen, it'd be crazy. I have those moments a lot with the morning show boot camp where it's like, I think about just being that young kid coming up to you all nervous and wheeze and BJ Shea, and now I talk to you guys. It's very weird how if you keep working at it, what happens with growth. It's bizarre.
Meanwhile, all these guys are wearing freaking hearing aids.
Well,
Brother Weeze, I went out to dinner with Brother Weeze before the summer down in South Florida. And he goes, bro, I can't hear a fucking thing. And he goes, so wear this. And he gives me a clip-on microphone that's attached to his hearing aids. And I forgot that I had it on, and I went to the bathroom, and then I realized in the bathroom that I had it on, and he could hear everything in the bathroom, and I laid it on. I was like, making sound. We laughed so hard about that.
Dude, Weeze is a legend, man, because he just doesn't care. And he's sort of like you, where he's a hometown hero. So you guys have that aspect, which is really cool.
That's the only advice I can give to anybody. Marry your market. Don't bounce around. If you're going to go somewhere every 3 to 4 years, do it when you're 20. But once you get to a certain age, you need to be there. You need to know, own the town, know everybody in it. And it's funny. My producer, Mike Anderson, he's like, "Oh, we got to get this guy on the show." I'm like, "All right, hold on. Here's his number." I've collected everybody's number over the years from the market, and it's always good. And one of the things I've also done is made the local Miami guys heroes on my show. I met this young filmmaker 20 years ago Billy Corbin, who went on to create Cocaine Cowboys, and Billy's a superstar now. But when I first saw his name in the paper, local kid doing a documentary, I'm like, we should get this guy on the show. Same thing with Brad Meltzer, the writer. I'm like, Brad Meltzer, local kid, has first book released. I'm like, invite this kid. He shows up with his whole family and his dad and everybody. I was his first interview. And, Brad Meltzer, then, he's on the Tonight Show whenever his books come out. He's a superstar.
Are you able to appreciate the music that comes from your town? Because I was visiting back in May, and there were a lot of guys that were playing rap music from speakers and wanting to give me a free CD, which I knew it wasn't free, but my mom thought maybe it was free. I'm like, no, they're trying to make you pay for a mixtape, Mom. Do you ever have that? Like, do you get into some of the rap music that's from there at all?
No. Sorry. No, I don't. I mean, it's just not. Yeah, I appreciate the talent, but I don't listen to rap. I just never really, never. And my son, when he was young and impressionable, would try to turn me on to it. And guess what? He listens to Neil Young now, and he's 22.
I'm wondering if that's going to happen with me, because I like rock music, but I also like rap music. But my uncle is just crazy about he must drive everywhere when we go on vacation, doesn't want to get an Uber. Back in the day, he wouldn't get a cab. So I told him, let's turn on Big 105.9 when we were in town. And dude, he was jamming out to the music, man, because he's like maybe your age, and he was absolutely loving it.
Well, Ryan, how old are you? I don't even know.
I'm going to be 29 on Friday.
Yeah, so you grew up in a different era than me, but I didn't grow up with rap. So, but I'll be honest with you, I grew up with, in the late 70s, and there's disco, and I don't listen to that anymore. I remember it, but the stuff that has lasted, I mean, there's a reason, classic rock has been around for so long. I mean, you think about it, it's been on the radio since it came out. It's a very palatable format. Will the rap or the hip hop songs that you like today be around in 40 years? That's going to be the test of time.
And the thing with rock music that you just know is so influential about it, especially now that I'm learning more about when they sample songs, is just hearing it in rap music. Like there's a new song by Young Gravy where he does Never Gonna Give You Up, that song from the 80s, obviously. And It's like the #1 song on TikTok and on the Billboard 100. And like all these Gen Z are like, oh my God, this song's great. And I told my little cousin that's a song from the 80s, and he had no idea. So that's when you know rock radio and rock music has left a legacy that will never end, is when some Gen Z rapper uses it for a mix.
Oh, I'll accept that. And you look, man, it's all just because I don't listen to it. We form our musical tastes, they say, from when you're like 16 to 21. After that, every now and then you'll hear something cool and you go, oh, I like that. But most of your stuff, that's where your basis of and the foundation of music is found. Interestingly, though, like I'm wondering why my kid loves classic rock. Well, he had heard a lot of it growing up.
Well, Paul, before I let you go, man, where can people find your show? Because you don't just have to be in town to listen on Big 105.9. Where can people listen? No.
Well, you said you work for iHeart, the iHeart Radio app. The Paul Castronovo Show. Our podcast is up all the time. You can listen live on the iHeartRadio app. So yeah, that's it. And you're in South Florida, come by. I'll buy you a cold one.
Well, Paul, it's been great having you on, man. What I've liked about you since day one.
I got one more.
What's up?
I got one more. I'm partners in 4 restaurants in South Florida. So if you come down, send your people to Taco Craft. It's me and Dan Marino and a few other guys.
Oh, nice.
We really, really great Mexican food. I highly recommend the braised oxtail empanadas or the Castronovo quesadilla. The lobster tacos will blow your mind, and we have a 20-foot wall of tequila at Taco Craft.
Don't you have a Paul and Young Ron pizza as well?
Now it's called a Paulie Pie at Anthony's Coal Fired Pizza. I got the Castronovo Bowl at Poke Bowl at Papa's Raw Bar. I've got sandwiches named after me around town. Yeah, I got a bunch of those. That's kind of cool.
That has to be weird that when people order food, they're saying your name. That's like a legacy thing, man. That shows that you left an impact in town, man.
And that's another great honor. I can't thank you enough, Ryan. I hope some ears get on this and hear this.
Awesome. I'll be sure to tweet it out and send it to Brian as well, bro. Thank you, man.
Take care, bro.
All right, bye. See you, Paul.